Jim Duffy went for 3 up front as he looked to end a 5-game run without a win. Key men Steve Lovell and Brent Sancho made the line-up. Ryan Essen came in for suspended keeper David Priest, who was red-carded last week. But still no Steve Tosh or Noel Whelan for the Dons. Defeat to Hibs last week made Aberdeen's third-place position slightly more precarious, while Dundee were looking up at the rest of the division from 12th, and they were almost looking at an early deficit as the shot from Richard Foster whistled past. More defending required from the corner. Barry Smith answering the call to arms to keep his goal intact. Defending set pieces might well be on the agenda at training for the Dundee players this week. They had the flying Derek Suter to thank for keeping the Dons out this time. Suter has his eyes on being undisputed #1 at Dens. He did his cause no harm in this game and probably a lot of good. To be honest, with the standard of defending in front of him, it was just as well for Dundee. Their keeper was in form. Foster again got a close-up view. When Dundee got out of their shell, it was to good effect. Nothing fancy, and if Neil Barrett had held his run a fraction of a second, the flag would have stayed down and his goal would have counted. A timely reminder to the Aberdeen defence, who were troubled again as Fabian Caballero set up John Sutton. When you're bottom, you'll take anything that comes your way, so Dundee would have been pleased to take advantage when Aberdeen lost possession. Caballero waited before playing the ball in for a goal. It was all tips, taps and toes. It was good enough to beat Essen, good enough for Barrett and for the delighted home support. The manager too, I'm sure, would have been pleased. Not so Jimmy Calderwood, looking for a reply from his players, although I doubt the reaction of Stephen Craig was the kind of response he had in mind. There's no defence for Craig as disappointment and frustration got the better of him before he saw red for a second time. Aberdeen then down to 10 men for the second week in a row. Yet they turned up the heat in the Dundee defence in search of an equaliser, but the home side hard pressed to keep them out. Star of the show was Suter, and while he didn't make a meal of it, he was rewarded with a night out, courtesy of his girlfriend's mother. His performance enough to give Mr Calderwood indigestion. Nothing seemed to fall for Aberdeen in front of goal. The shots that would have found the net earlier in the season kept out, as the pernicious gods of football looked the other way. Whether by chance or intervention, Suter and the woodwork combined to keep Dundee ahead, and nor could Darren Mackey force a change as he tiptoed through the Dens' defence. Dundee under pressure, all hands on deck, the ball over the bar. Suter would have the last say, his performance taking Dundee off the bottom and making it a happier Christmas for their fans. Aberdeen stay third, will play worse and lose before the season's end.
It's always going to be difficult in the SPL. Everyone knows that there's not too much money around, and each team is capable of a surprise result. So we've just got to work hard, show the same belief and commitment as we showed today, and hopefully that can take us further up the league.
It's the second week in a row we're playing with 10 men, and the second week in a row we'll finish very strongly, but the breaks wouldn't go for us again. I don't want to sound as if it's a hard luck story every week. I thought in phases we played really well, but we've lost the game again.
And as you can see from the table, that result has done Dundee some considerable good. They're now on 16 points. Dundee United and Livingston joint bottom on 15. And look at Hibernian, they've closed the gap on Aberdeen. It could have been 10 points last week. It is now only 1. Jim, just looking at Aberdeen at the weekend, that's 2 quick defeats they've had, but maybe they're entitled to a wee blip.
I honestly think that Mr Calderwood has been fantastic there. I think personally it's 2 of the best managers in Scotland were in that game there, and I was really pleased that Jim Duffy was the winner, because I think he needs the points more, and what he's had to go through at Dundee in the last year or so has been incredible, and he's come through it with flying colours and still had his time for the press and everybody else in football.
And Archie is working, as Jim's hinting there, with meagre resources.
Yeah, and the other thing, of course, is Aberdeen come from a tradition of winning in Europe, and there's great expectations amongst the Aberdeen supporters. They've been in the wilderness for so long And I've got to understand that that's a 150% improvement on last season. And I've got to grab that and build on it. And as you can see from the end of the game there, they could have scored 2 or 3 goals. And from the start of the season, they've lacked that cutting edge. Well, it's an old story for virtually every club. But them particularly, they hold the ball well, they play the ball around well, but in the penalty box, they're missing chances they should put away.
And Jimmy Calderwood has fined Stephen Craig a fortnight's wages for this red card. It just looked petulant, didn't it?
He's quite right. There's no doubts at all. There's no place in football for that. And
It's a very good kick at him.
Just pure stupidity.
Stupidity, Archie.
Well, I think there must have been a niggle, Jim, going on there. I mean, that tackle in itself didn't warrant the reaction that he gave him there. I'm not making excuses, but they must have been going at each other throughout the game.
And of course, it was on the goal scorer, Neil Barrett, the man who has clinched the 3 points for Dundee. And huge result for Dundee, Jim. We were hinting at that earlier.
Fantastic result, because the 2 Jimmies have been doing fantastic at Aberdeen. And again, they've not spent much money, if any, on the players, but it shows you what a good manager, good coaches can do. And he's made a big difference there. And they've been having an exceptionally good season after a few bad seasons. But Jim Duffy is unbelievable, the way that he is working with his hands tied up his back.